looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, and a great cloud and fire unfolding in itself, and a brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof was the color of amber, and out of the midst of the fire, also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance, and they had the likeness of a man, and each one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings, and their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot. And they sparkled like the color of burnished brass, and they had hands of a man under their wings, and in their 4 sides, and they 4 had faces in their wings, and their wings were joined one to another, and they turned not when they went, and they went every one straight forward. For the likeness of the faces, they had 4 had the face of a man, and the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and they 4 had the face of an eagle. Thus were their faces, and their wings were stretched upward. 2 wings of every one were joined one to another, and 2 covered their bodies. And they went every one straight forward, whither the Spirit was to go, they went, and they turned not when they went. That's enough to read of that, but what we're seeing here, Ezekiel was given the vision of some angels here, and they came out of a cloud of fire. And not only that, but they came in a craft, and here in verse 15 of chapter 1 it says, And now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with its 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl. And they 4 had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. When they went upon their 4 sides, and turned not when they went. As for their rings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about the 4. And when the living creatures went, and the wheels went by them, and when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Whithersoever the Spirit was to go, they went. Whither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. So what we see here, in order to come into our dimension, these living creatures came in some type of technological craft, which may well be saucer-shaped, disc-shaped, or wheel-shaped. And we see here that what has happened here is, as we have witnessed even in the lifetime or the last few generations, we've seen a proliferation of such craft come into our own reality. And they come through from another dimension. And if you can picture this, if you took a piece of paper here, and you're looking at a piece of paper, and all you see is the piece of paper, if something splits a hole in the piece of paper and comes through, it comes through the paper and you can't see the other side of the paper. Very much like in our own dimension, that we walk forward in time and can't go back and can't go sideways and so forth and so on. So an interdimensional craft could come through this hole and could disappear back through the hole, make all types of movement that might defy our law of physics. But these interdimensional craft we call UFOs. And so what we see here is that UFOs have proliferated in our society since the year 1948. And it's very interesting that that year was also the year, on May 14th, 1948 to be exact, that Israel became a nation. So we have all of these interdimensional crafts showing up around 1948 when Israel became a nation, and all of these beings that are on these craft, and now we're getting reports of them. They're the Greys, they're the reptilians, and they're the Pleiadians, as they are called. And these beings either resemble human beings, they resemble reptiles, or they resemble these little short gray people with the big heads and the eyes with no eyeballs and such as that. And when you stop and look at what is going on, you have to come back to Matthew chapter 24. And let's turn back there to where we were when we began, because this is what makes the study of the days of Noah so significant. Because we look in Matthew chapter 24, and again in verse 36, and let's start reading where we began earlier today. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not of the angels in heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days of Noah were before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So also the coming of the Son of Man be. And so this is the interesting thing about this whole scenario that we've been through. You think about fallen angels. They took on a body. They came to the earth, and they married women. They generated an offspring that became a race of mighty men of old, men of renown. And just for the sake of argument, let's call them the Titans, because we can say that the Greek Titans fit the bill. And so this race of Titans came into the world, and they pretty much ruled with an iron hand, I would think. And because they were giants, and they were mighty men, and so they pretty much had the run of the place. And so you had this race, which was obviously evil enough for God to say, that's it, I've had it. Man has become so wicked because of this influence. We can't go on in this direction anymore. And besides that, God realized what Satan's strategy was, and that was to pollute, corrupt the gene pool of the entire human race to prevent a Redeemer from coming. So therefore, God said, that's it, it's over, and He destroyed the world with a flood. Now, if the days of Noah were such that in the time of the tribulation period, the days of the coming of the Son of Man will be the same thing, what is going to go on? Well, let's back up for a minute, and let's look at what we're talking about here so as not to lose anybody. We know from the study of Bible prophecy, well, let's start back further than that. We know that from the study of Scripture that God created the world somewhere around 4004 BC. Big surprise, guess what? The world is not 14 billion years old, I believe the evolutionist says. It is not 14 billion years old. The earth is not 14,000 years old. If you look at the Bible and you take a literal interpretation of Scripture, you find that the earth was created by God somewhere around 4004 BC. And we're really not going to get into that to any great degree, except just to say that the earth is a lot younger than most so-called pseudoscientists think that it is. And so the earth was created in approximately 4004 BC. The flood occurred in 1656 BC. I'm sorry, 1656 years later. So somewhere around 2500 BC. So 1656 years later, the flood occurred. And so now, and we come along, and then Abraham is born, Isaac and Jacob and Israel became a nation in here. And Jesus Christ came as the Messiah of Israel, whom they rejected, and died on the cross approximately 4,000 years into this whole timeline. So Jesus Christ died on the cross. Israel was scattered. In AD 70, Titus destroyed Jerusalem. 1.5 million Jews died. And the nation of Israel ceased to exist as a nation, and entered what we call now as the Age of Grace, or the Church Age. And this has been the period that we've lived in now for a period excuse me, of about 2,000 years. So we're about 6,000 years into this thing. And this period will end with what is known as the rapture of the church. Those who are born again during this period of time will be taken out in the rapture of the church. And then a 7-year period will begin, which is called the tribulation period. And that's what you have to understand when we start looking at Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24 deals only with this 7-year period right here. That is all that Matthew 24 deals with. Is that 7-year period, because Jesus' disciples asked some pretty specific questions. And He gave them some